Welcome to NAIFA Live. I'm your host, Zach Hewells. We have a great speaker lined up for you this morning from our host location in Moline, Illinois. July is National Retirement Planning Month, so today's broadcast featuring retirement expert Curtis Cloke is the opportune time. Today's NAIFA Live is sponsored by the Alliance for Lifetime Income. NAIFA and the Alliance for Lifetime Income are partnering together to get the word out to consumers about the benefits of including annuities in your financial portfolio and to take the risk out of retirement. Did you know that NAIFA's Find a Trusted Advisor search tool is now listed on the Alliance's retireyourrisk.org website? This website gets millions of impressions per month, and it's just another value add of your NAIFA membership. And speaking of value adds, to really get the word out, the Alliance for Lifetime Income is the exclusive sponsor of this summer's Rolling Stones concert tour. If you have tickets or you're thinking about getting tickets to any of the concerts, let us know. NAIFA and the ALI have partnered together to provide a special experience for our members, including swag bags and individual interviews. Just send us your name to info@naifa.org and then stop by the Retire Your Risk Experience area outside of the concert to check into your NAIFA concert member experience. As a matter of fact, our past national president, Julie McNeely, was just featured on the retireyourrisk.org site, making us all very NAIFA proud. So go check it out, and let's get more NAIFA members talking to consumers about the power of annuities. And as for today's program, some of you are joining us virtually, while others are joining us from one of the 24 watch locations across California, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Maine, Minnesota, and North Dakota. If this is your first NAIFA Live, welcome. If you're a regular, welcome back. And if you're not a NAIFA member, then an especially warm welcome to you. And if you enjoyed today's presentation and want more information about NAIFA, talk to your watch party location host or email us at info@naifa.org. Speaking of watch parties, let's take a moment and see who's all out there. Hi, everyone. Welcome to your NAIFA meeting. Now, just so you know, today 2 CE credits have been approved for participants in Arkansas, Georgia, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Montana, North Dakota, Iowa, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Washington, D.C., and Wisconsin. For those of you joining us virtually from those states with the intention to earn CE credits, you must remain present for the duration of the program. Throughout the program, polling questions will appear on your screen, and you'll have 2 minutes to answer them in order to attain the CE credit. The first polling question today for individual viewers is, how many years have you been in the business? How many years have you been in the business? Please use the polling function on your screen to respond. You have 2 minutes. Now, NAIFA Live will be held every month, so please mark your calendar for the next meeting on August 8th, hosted by NAIFA Nebraska. This meeting will feature David Holstrom presenting 2 interesting planning topics. Now, it is my great pleasure to turn the program over to NAIFA Quad Cities President Chad Nelson, who will introduce the speaker. Chad?
Thank you, Zach. Welcome, NAIFA members. NAIFA Iowa is pleased to host the 7th in a series of monthly NAIFA Live events. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Curtis Cloke.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Trying to get all the technical issues worked out here. Thank you for asking me to participate. I think I talked to Barry several months ago about this, and you know, I've spoken at our local NAIFA events here in Iowa as a member of Iowa for many years and had no idea or understanding at the time Barry asked me to do this, what it is that we were about to do. So I'm glad to participate in this program. John from the NAIFA headquarters, I actually met briefly at the Gamma meeting I was at, in Lamp and Gamma, and he told me that they were doing these. Do they know anything about them? And I said, sure do. I think I'm presenting at one of them here coming up. So we'll see if we can get some great information out to us. I know we're all interested in retirement planning today. We're interested in all areas of retirement planning and the products which we're going to talk about. So we're going to talk a lot about our products. Now, I want to just right at the front of the session today, I want to get you encouraged to text in capital letters the word Thrive, the letter U, Thrive, the letter U, and text that to 66866, and you will be giving some free information, additional videos from the content today and they'll send you a link. So be sure and check that out. And I see some of you on your phones. You might as well do it while you have it in your hand. Then you can set it down and we can get to business. All right. So I want to talk about perspective principles and retirement planning. And I realized a long time ago that we do not know what we do not know. Let me ask you a question. Can you give me a list of things you do not know? However, we know what we know, correct? And we know some of the things that we don't know. We can name those. But we do not know what we do not know. And as long as I live even in the space for which I'm considered an expert, working with the American College as an academic, every day, or nearly every day, something new reveals itself to me where I realize that I do not know what I do not know. And some of those things are immaterial to me and other things are transforming. So some of the things I hope to share with you today will be transforming. And let's just talk about this perspectives for a minute. Perspective of what we know frames the limitations of what we actually perceive. What is true is always true, regardless if we believe or know the real truth. Principles of truth are truths that work every time. Granddad used to tell me, Curtis, there's a difference between values and principles. Principles are those things that work every time. They work off of truth, and they work whether you know them or not, or whether you believe them or not. And the example he would always give me is gravity. Just tell me that you don't believe in gravity, get up on a building or on a ladder and jump and see what happens. It works every time, and it's timeless. So some of the principles we're going to talk about today are so ordained and automated that if you understand them and get the perspective transformation about how they will impact your clients, they will transform your practice, your profitability, how you speak, what you say, and the value that you're delivering to your clients. By the way, if principles are true every time, what are values? Well, values are our personal opinions. I guess I didn't finish the thought with Granddad. So just remember, values are opinions, and they might be convictions, something we really sold out to. But principles are beyond that. Principles are simply those things that are true, and they're the things that we believe are true, but we don't know always what we don't know. Sometimes we believe in things that aren't true, and it takes a long time to get that perspective. So the perspectives we're going to talk about in this session are something called the illusion of control around liquidity. By the way, Wade Pfau has attended our session, Thrive University, in Burlington, Iowa, believe it or not. He actually did one in Philadelphia, one in Burlington, Iowa. And he wrote an article for the Wall Street Journal on the plane from his newfound perspective and transformation thinking when it comes to the illusion of control. We're going to talk specifically about that. We're going to talk about luck versus skill and predictability versus unpredictability. And we're going to talk about what clients want, top 5 risks to mitigate in retirement. How do we do this agnostic approach? I'm going to say something on the onset. I've been in business a long time, 32 years this year. In fact, one of the gentlemen in the room that I remember the day I got in the business, Mr. Michael Gata, he and I have been in the business. I think he's been in longer than I have, actually, two years longer. But Mike and I remember each other at the start. And as long as I've been in business, I remember all the times that I was involved in a funnel to a product sale. You know what I'm talking about? I want to suggest to you that maybe we should go to planning where we get their story. Who's their story? Get the client's story, and then we backfill our solution and the products we select based on the client's story, what they want. So that's not a funnel to product sale. That's real planning. And I want you to imagine for a minute, there's a mechanic with a Matco toolbox or a Snap-on toolbox with 1,000 tools in it. Wouldn't it be amazing if there were 5 favorite tools in the box, and every time a problem with a car come into the General Motors car dealership, he's trying to figure out how to only use those 5 tools? Yeah. Wouldn't that be ridiculous? No, what happens is he brings the car in, he finds out exactly what the problem is, and only after that does he decide what tools that he's going to use to fix the car. We need to be real practitioners here. And the products that we have solve every one of these solutions that the clients have for problems. It's just that how we go about it may be a little bit different way. The power of annuity guarantees, which is a fundamental strength of this session, is how do we use our products in this industry coordinated with other products in this industry to actually create magic for clients. And then we're going to do something, we're going to show you how to do something I trademarked called buy income and invest the difference. Trademarked that a long time ago. And we're going to consider housing wealth today, believe it or not. There's a few folks on the call that are part of a group that I'm with, the Reverse Mortgage Housing Wealth group. It was out of the American College. Wade Fowl still heads that. Craig Lamona, who used to be at American College, is now at the University of Illinois in Champaign. And I happen to be on the task force. And incidentally from that, I worked with Don Graves a number of years ago, and he taught me something I didn't know that I didn't know, because I was one of those guys that come to housing wealth, put my fingers in the ears and went, la, 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 don't tell me, I don't want to hear it, because I had a bad impression about housing wealth issues around reverse mortgages. And I realized there are certain clients who've not done the right job of saving money, where the only solution they may have is incorporating housing wealth as their solution. So we'll have just a little bit at the tail end of this to accommodate those folks I know have dialed into the call who are very focused on NAIFA, who also want to see how housing wealth serves retirement planning in an authentic, agnostic, and academic way. And finally, we're going to frame these solutions with visuals and versus numerical data. People need, you and I both know that most of our consumer adult clients learn by auditory and visual. Very few times are they going to learn by numerical. They're just sick and tired of columns and numbers on a page, and we're cramming them down their throat and saying, isn't that great? And they just don't react that way. So we're going to talk about how to do it a different way. So once you see this picture, by the way, Beth, how am I doing with the cameras? Okay. Here's a picture. Some of you have seen this picture before. I've used this now for a while. But this picture makes no sense, right? It's a bridge from nowhere to nowhere. What's the point? Well, there's a hurricane that came through the land in Honduras. This, by the way, this bridge was millions of dollars. It's 3 years old when this picture was taken. It was 3 years old. And yet a hurricane came through, and not only did it tear out the roads leading to the bridge, what else did it do? It moved an entire river. Metaphorically, this is what's happening in the retirement landscape, not just for America, but for all domesticated societies. There's a series of phenomena that are going on, and there's one sole phenomena that's above all the others in terms of creating a vector change of why we have to care about retirement and how we do it. We can't do the things we did 50 years ago. Markets aren't performing the same way, but there's one fundamental reason. Anybody want to guess what it is? It's longevity, right? You've heard Tommy say this many times, Tom Hagna. Well, we know that Medicare is unfunded by a lot. You know, by 75 years from now, they're saying 38 trillion. And I suppose if Medicare for all comes into play, it may be, who knows what the number's going to be. Less than 10% of companies today offer pensions. And I think this is an old number, by the way. I'll bet it's less than 2% now. U.S. state pensions are underfunded by more than $1 trillion. Why? Why are all these numbers upside down? There's one simple answer, and here it is. If we look at the 2012 mortality tables, by the way, it took 2 years to release those tables. In 2014 is when they were finally revealed in the Wall Street Journal and other publications. The average age of life expectancy for a male at age 65 is 86.6. And for a woman is 88.8. Now, there's a couple things I want to talk about here. The first thing I want you to know is I got a phone call from another advisor, can't remember where. He says, hey, I just read an article that life expectancy is going down. Well, there's more than one life expectancy. See, there's a life expectancy from 0 to death. Then there's a life expectancy from 65 to death. The number that we care about is from 65 to death. We're not talking about 0 to death. Why is the 0 to death going down in life expectancy? We have a few epidemics going on in our country. Have you heard about that? Like opioid and depression, and kids and teenagers and young adults doing things at a higher level than we've seen in the past with the anxieties in this country. But that has no impact on those that survive all those years, make the 65. That number's still going up. And by the way, if we look at the 2000 tables versus the 12 tables, and we look at the one prior to that one, we're seeing about a 2.4 to 2.5 increase every 12 years to life expectancy of men and women in America who make it to 65. So this is an ongoing phenomena as medical technology enhances, for which we must be prepared. And so we can't depend on markets to do the things that markets did when we lived 10 years and died after we retired. And now I want to talk about Bernoulli's formula. Now, I didn't bring my dice today, didn't bring my big bag, but normally I have a big dice in my hand. And let's pretend for just a minute that I roll the dice and I roll a 4. Well, what's the chance I get a 4? Shout it out. 1 in 6, I heard. All right? I'm going to roll that dice again and I get a 6. What's the chance I get a 6? Okay? Let's see if I can test your theory. This might be one of those things you didn't know you didn't know. You see, if it's 1 in 6, what you're saying is if I roll the dice 4 more times, then in 6 rolls of the dice, I would have rolled a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that true? It's not true. So the perception of 1 in 6 is incorrect. Bernoulli gave us the gift. This is the gift, this formula. And it basically, if I decipher, by the way, if it looks Greek, it is. But let me give you the U.S. translation. Expected value equals the odd of gain times the value of gain. And what that means is, if I have a dice, a single dice with 6 sides, different dots on each side, 1 to 6, there's a finite, calculatable number that I can calculate that says, how many times do I have to roll the dice with 6 odds so that 1/6 of the time I roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is what we perceive. Y'all with me? Okay. How many times do I have to roll that dice? There's an answer.
30.
Keep going. How about 10 million? Takes 10 million rolls of the dice for it to be true that 1/6 of the time I get a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you're going, Curtis, what's the relevancy to this? Well, I want to talk about luck and skill. You see, if I know how to calculate the odds, then I know how to price morbidity and mortality, right? And that's the key antidote. Is we are in the business where the companies and the manufacturers produce products for which we represent our clients as a practitioner agnostically fit the problems they define they want, is that we with finality can buy income for income that starts today. We can buy income for income that's going to start tomorrow. And we can buy income that's going to start 5, 10, 15 years from now. By the way, this is going to sound like a too simple statement, but do you know you can buy income today or in the future for any period of time up to 50 years from now? I can buy, it'd be silly to do it, but I could buy income that starts today and promises an absolute finite number in 50 years from now. And know exactly what it is and for how long it's going to pay. Know what my gains are. Know what my losses are. I can do that today. Just as easy as buying my favorite flavor of ketchup off the grocery store shelf. That's how easy it is to do. Isn't that silly? And we make this really hard. We don't know it. We don't understand it. But we're going to talk about how to use the actual world math and science to buy income for which we can improve superior performance. There's a perception this costs us something. It doesn't. So that we can move from luck with a safe withdrawal rate from risk-based assets, guessing and hoping. I call it assume and consume, right? When you do a safe withdrawal strategy with no promise-based income, all you have is an assume and consume strategy. You make a bunch of assumptions about how long you're going to live, what the performance is going to be to your fixed income, what your dividend rate's going to be, what your capital gains and taxability of the dividends are going to be, and you're just, and then how's the performance going to fly with sequence of returns in the red zone? That's just crossing your fingers, toes, eyeballs, knees, and everything else in your body, hoping it works out okay, right? That's luck. We're talking about skill, where I buy a base of income from a base I can't destroy, one I can't outlive, and principle, if done properly, I couldn't lose a dime of. You mean, Curtis, how you do that? Well, that's pretty darn easy. An FI with an income rider does that, right? One goes up, doesn't go down. I wouldn't lose a dime in principle, but also an income annuity, right? SPIA or DIA with a joint lifetime, single lifetime, period certain, or installment or cash refund does the same thing. And when I do installment or cash refund on a lifetime, even if it's an income annuity, I can promise without being unethically challenged to say, I can give you a stream of income from a base you can't destroy, one you cannot outlive, and principal you can't lose a penny of. Well, you say that to a client, those are magic words. Very magic words. By the way, did I use the word annuity? Should we be using the word annuity early in the framework of our work with a client? Go ahead, let's see what happens. The mechanic equally doesn't come out into the TV room where you're eating donuts and drinking coffee and bring his crescent wrench out and say, what a great tool this is. Look at my crescent wrench. We wouldn't do this. We simply wouldn't do the same thing. So I want to talk about the cycle of decision. This is really important. This is psychonomics, as Tom and I call it. And psychonomics is to understand, we used some PhD academics to help us test 5,000 slides in a 32-point client slide deck for our first meeting. We tested 5,000 slides to see what combination of slides, as we practically took a client down the path of the first meeting and closed that meeting, not for solution, but closed that meeting for the fees that we were going to charge to do the analytics. We stopped giving those analytics away 3 years ago because we've gone to a fee-based model. Now we're proudly fee and commission. We'll never be fee only. We'll never be commission only. We're proudly both. But how do we get that client from hello to close with confidence and happy that they did business with us? And so I want to show you this little cycle here. It's aware of the situation, but no urgency. So let me talk about this 75-year-old husband and wife in Tampa, Florida. Every month for an entire 5 years, they go to the same restaurant. They sit at the same table. And they have the same darn conversation. You know what it is? They have this large 6,000 square foot house, big yard. They hardly ever get upstairs anymore. The kids come home once a year, and they're spending about 3 times more maintaining this big old house, for which they're not really occupying, more than they would if they downsize. And so he's worried about her, if he dies, having the burden of taking care of this big house. And so the discussion every month for 5 years is we need to downsize the house. Why is it that they had this conversation for 5 years and nothing happened? I don't know. There was no urgency. The same thing that happens to your clients when they're prior to the red zone or in the 10-year red zone. See, red zone we thought was 5 years before and 5 years after because Prudential said so. It ain't. It's 10. Why? Because we had the lost decade. Don't you remember that? And once we had the lost decade, the red zone's 10 years before, 10 years after. And by the way, Moshe Milewski did a study on this and said, if you have a 20% decline in 10 years before retirement, you have an 80% greater chance of running out of money before you both die. So it's a 10-year red zone. That means that we should be starting the projections and the work of planning for retirement at least 10 years before, if not 15. One of the things I've been very successful in helping the practitioners I work with at Thrive University and working with our tools and programs and my work with the American College and the RACP is helping advisors use the verbiage with their existing clients to get those clients positioning toward projecting that retirement calculation a long time sooner than they were doing before. Because normally what happened, they'll call you 30 days ahead or 6 months ahead or a year ahead, and then they're hoping that it all works out, right? Well, let's get back to our story here. Finally, one day they went to dinner, and nobody knows exactly what the reason is, but on Monday, he called the realtor. So they went from aware of situation to no urgency to becoming aware, and now it's urgent. Well, that's what we're talking about with our client meetings in retirement. How do we get them when they come in to understand? Because they come in 10 years before. They think they got a lot of time, don't they? But they need to be basically setting aside 10 years in advance a block of capital that's safely positioned appropriately for both growth and income in 10 years that doesn't risk the red zone. So we better have a block of their portfolio capital locked down and set in stone for the first 10 years of retirement if we're going to protect the red zone. Are you with me? And the reason they don't do that is they perceive they're losing a control, number one, and number two, they perceive that it costs them some opportunity. If you can show them that their resistance to those two fears is actually incorrect, and it's the reverse, where they're not leaving that opportunity on the table, they're actually creating that opportunity instead of losing opportunity. You now can quantify in your report at the end of that process of those analytics to show them what the delay costs. When you show them how big the cost is, do you think you can create immediate urgency where before there would have been none? And they'll say, we'll call you in 5 years. Are you with me? It's a distinctive difference in how we move people from hello to close while encouraging them to do this process early. But we have to be able to contrast solutions. But remember how we're contrasting solutions. The problems are we're using a funnel to a product sale, ain't going to work. Everybody has knowledge about these sales tactics anymore, and it turns them off and they run, causes procrastination. And because they don't want a bunch of numbers crammed down their throat, they want to see it auditorily, hear it auditorily, and see it visually. And so we've got to be able to contrast that visually. And this creates the decision to implement, and be glad they did, by the way. And it stops the 6-month delay or never hearing back from them after wasting a 90-minute meeting, which causes a profitability issue to your practice. And if you're not 65 licensed, I'm not suggesting you need to be 65 licensed, but what I'm suggesting is you need to pair yourself up with somebody who is, so that you can get perceived value for the work you do. All right. How to avoid procrastination, shorten the sales cycle of profitability. This is a key distinction. You need people to understand. Nothing hides inefficiency in advisors from better than success, my good friend Chuck Hollander says. Now, I want to show you another problem that causes procrastination. It's how you get your timing right. You see, here's what happens. Client comes in, we say, hello, how are you? How'd you get here? And for 10% of the meeting, they tell you. And you're very quick to shut them down. And what's the rest of the meeting? All about you. And all about your products. And you wonder why they run and never come back. And we smile when I say that, but I can't tell you how real that is. Okay? So I want to reverse this. I want to spend 90% getting to know them and getting their story. Because, you know, if I get their story right, their story are my specs for the analytics. Let me give you an example. When are you going to retire? How much money in today's dollars are you going to need? Now, we got to top that up for health insurance. By the way, and if I use a 3% inflation rate for your lifestyle spending, it's probably 5 or 6 I need to separate for the medical costs, right? Oh, and by the way, when does the house pay off? Oh, 6 years after retirement. Does the house payment inflate? Do you know what all these softwares do? They just put that house payment in the 3% inflationary category. Is that right? No, it creates an illusion sometimes they don't have enough to retire because it illustrates an overdependence on income flow, which now has to be taxed up and maybe a higher Medicare Part B tier, and we get the math wrong. So we have to get the math right. You have to have tools that have ability to dissect those kinds of pieces of information. But the 90% of the time, I'm getting their story, and 10% of the time, I'm giving really a response to them about who I am without talking product. It's a complete dynamic change. But that's not the way Michael and I were taught when we went to work for Prudential in the beginning. We weren't a sophisticated society as we are today, but I'm talking about the way it is today if you really want success. So it's reversing that timing and how much time we devote. So key elements of retirement are knowing what retirees want, taking risk off the table, a divide and conquer approach, buy income and invest the difference. I want to talk about Wade Fowler's 4 L's of retirement. Talk about the core measurements of safe versus unsafe. And we are going to talk about housing wealth, but that'll be an addendum at the end. So what do retirees want? Here it is. We call this getting to the heart of the matter. That's that 90% I'm talking about, right? This is the first 10 to 15 minutes after hello, how are you? What's your name? Let me give you the vernacular. Come in the door. Barry, Jane, nice to meet you. How did you come to find our office? And they tell me. I said, well, thank you very much. Well, you're here to talk about retirement, I understand. Is that right? Did I get that narrative? Yep. Well, we have a 3-meeting process. I'd like to go through that first meeting today. I just want you to know before we start, this is a 90-minute free consultation. We don't charge for this meeting. At the end of this meeting, I will present to you the value that we deliver and the process we go through. It's a 3-meeting commitment. It requires both spouses to attend or we'll reschedule. We'll do it every time. Don't come without the other. It's really important. And then you will know exactly the deliverables and the value I'm going to deliver, and I'll, at the end of this meeting, tell you what it would cost to continue to work with me further. Would that be okay? Now, have I bragged about me? Have I talked about product? All I've done is got to know who they are and why they're there, verify why they're there, get them to agree to let me go through my first meeting process, taking all the pressure off, because before they got there, let me tell you what happened. As soon as we got the call, hey, want to come in and talk to Curtis about retirement planning? We're going to show it to you. It's going to be on the screen here in a few slides. We have something called the 18 Risk Brochure. As one of the 42 academics at the American College that created the Retirement Income Certified Professionals designation, the 42 academics collectively with Jamie Hopkins, David Littell, and Wade Pfau defined 18 risks in retirement. I was able to create a brochure that was consumer friendly that explained individually what each of those 18 risks are. When the client calls and makes an appointment, I then have my staff send them a letter that says, thank you so much for being interested in discussing your retirement goals and dreams with our office. And enclosed, you'll find a special brochure called the Danger Zone, which defines the 18 risks in retirement. We would ask when you come to the meeting that you bring an open mind, a writing utensil, a blank sheet of paper, and have studied as homework this 18 risk brochure. Be prepared to tell us which of these risks are most concerning to you. That's all you'll need to bring to the first meeting. We look forward to seeing you. How simple is that? Do you know why I don't want them to bring a single document on their assets? Because I ain't doing a nickel's worth of work until they agree to hire me. Why names Pete would I ever have them bring documents to the first meeting when all we're trying to do is court one another and see if we get along? So that's the magic. And because that's the way we handle it, there's a little bit of subliminal thing going on called scarcity. See, when you look too hungry, give it all to me now. You know, that's just a subliminal message too. You're just a little bit too hungry. But when you can use it or lose it, you know, well, it doesn't matter. Here's what I do. I'm not for everybody, not everybody's for me, but if it's for you, here's my fee. But do the analytics. It changes the game. By the way, I used to charge half the fee, and then on the deliverable, the other half of the fee. And I made a change, and I can't believe the difference. See, what will happen is when you have a three-meeting process, and they get halfway through the process, sometimes they'll judge early what they perceive to be the value, what they think they're going to get. And if they don't perceive the right thing, they may delay you ever getting to the final meeting, which is where, once you give them the deliverables, you get your other half. Well, that's a big time waster and procrastinator too. So because of that, we said, you pay it all up front. We're making a commitment, you make a commitment. Who chases who down for the next meeting now? It ain't me. They're hurrying me up. Why? They want value for their money. It changes the perspective of everything. So here's the questions. Here's the first question. Remember, this is 10, 15 minutes in. Where are you from? What was it like growing up? So I'm gonna illustrate this as though I was both the advisor and the client. Some of you heard these answers before, so bear with me as I do this, but it's powerful. This is the most requested talk I give. Is getting to the heart of the matter. So here I am. Where are you from? What was it like growing up? I'm the client. I grew up between the knees of my granddad on a John Deere 50. I spent every waking hour at granddad that I could. Let me ask you a question now, you the audience. For those of you that didn't know me, other than what you read about me in the publication of this live webinar or live workshop here for those in the class, you had an opinion about Curtis, speaker, whatever the bio said. But if you didn't know me and I suddenly told you that, I, as the advisor, asked a single question, I, the client, then gave a single one-sentence answer. Did your mind about maybe a little bit more who I was get expanded? Was it important? Here's the next question. What did you learn about money growing up? Isn't that a necessary question? You're getting their opinions about money, their history of money. Somewhere in here, you kind of hope they trash their current advisor without you being the one to do it. But you're never going to get that to come up if you don't ask questions. Now, they may, in fact, have a great relationship with their advisor. And I take assets away from great long-term advisors all day long. I just have to be able to show them something their advisor didn't show them, and they have to perceive it and see it and understand it. What's the hardest lesson you've had regarding money? So if they didn't tell me something in the first question, I give them a second chance. Could be their advisor, it could be that business that failed, could be that bad investment, that alternative gas stock, whatever. Next question. Well, I'm going to back up here. I told you I was going to pretend to be the client. So let's go back to this question. What did you learn about money growing up? Well, let me tell you what I learned about money growing up. My granddad taught me 3 basic principles. I already told you some of his stuff earlier. But here's his 3 basic principle rules of thumb. Hate debt. I just happened to be one of those guys who built my own house at 19. I've had it paid off at 21. I followed granddaddy's path. He said, give 10, save 10, and get used to living on an 80 standard. And he had an addendum to that. When you find what God made you to be and you found real success and contentment in doing that, then consume less, give more, and make sure before you die, you create more than you consume. And the third principle granddaddy had was to understand the law of the harvest. It was a pretty simple concept. When you put a kernel of corn in the ground and you go get the harvest in the summer, you don't get a kernel back for every one you plant. You pick up an ear of corn on average 600. And he taught me that every decision in life is kind of like sowing seed. And then on a good decision on a good day, times 600. And a bad decision on a bad day, times 600. What kind of days do you would like to have during the lifetime? See, we learn incredible things. Probably most clients aren't going to illustrate that way. And I've done this so many times. I've gotten really good at saying that narrative. And it's an impactful narrative, and I want it to be an impactful narrative. But sometimes you will have clients that will tell you things you've never heard, and it will change sometimes your life. Your client will say something that could change your perspective, transform your thinking, and change your life. But it gives you the antidotes. It gives you the perspective to help them with what it is they're trying to accomplish. So the next one is, what's best experience you had? Well, for me, the best experience I had was mentorship in the business. 6 months in the business, I had a $60 million general contracting company come to me from a guy in my church who was on the church board with me. And they said, we need to do buy-sell agreement. We need $10 million in permanent life insurance. And the CEO wants that to be whole life to convert to their package they take home with them when they retire. Now, how many of those calls do you get? And Michael remembers when that happened. It happened. And it took me 2.5 years to close that deal. And I quit every day until it happened, by the way. I hated the job. Until I found Tim Sellner out of Twin Cities at MINX. And Tim was an expert at buy-sell agreements, business planning. And I brought Tim in, and I was competing about 6 agents. And these guys all much brighter and smarter than me. And by the way, when I called the CFO the day after my church board member friend told me they were wanting to do this, he said, call the CFO. I called Tim. And Tim said, what do you know about buy-sell agreements? Remember, I'm 6 months in the business. I'm 23 years of age. How much do you think I knew? How much do you think I told him I knew? And we were in church. But the best experience I've had in this business, and this is for you guys, not the consumers, but you, the best thing I found, the best day I ever had was the day I chose mentorship, where I was willing to share the profits of success by bringing somebody in that knew more than I did for the things I didn't know, so I could mutually impact my client, the advisor I brought in, and myself. You see, Tim agreed to do that case for a 60-40 split. My 60% on the day of the close was $160,000. I was 25 years old. You think I ever looked at a help wanted ad again? This is the very reason I'm standing in front of you today. It's because mentorship. So I embrace it. What would you do with your time if no one paid you? Now, the reason this question's in this deck is very simple. Tim and his 4 buddies at that construction company are the ones that pressured me to do their group disability plan, which Tim Sellner helped me with. And then they pressured me to do the group benefits. They called me one day and said, we want you to take over our Blue Cross. So we got into group benefits. And one day, it surprised me in the mid-90s when they said, you tackle every new challenge we give you because we trust you. We want you to do our retirement planning. Oh my God, you want me to do what? It's the reason I'm standing in front of you guys is because Tim pressed me to do it. And so I got my head around retirement planning. 1999, I would make the DIA discovery, long before everybody knew about the DIA. Now, he retired using the process I'm describing today. I went to his retirement party at a restaurant 2 blocks down the street from my office in Burlington. He went to Florida for 6 months during the winter, come back, made an appointment. I met him for lunch at that same restaurant. I'm thinking things are going to be awesome when I get there. I can't wait to talk to him. When I get there and I finally shut up, I noticed that his bottom lip is quivering. I said, Tim, what's wrong? And he's not speaking, and at first I don't understand, and I realize he's lost composure for a minute while he's trying to tell me what it is he called me to tell me. And I'm thinking, this is really bad. I said, is Susie okay? The kid's okay? And I started filling in the blanks while he was composing himself. And finally, when he composed himself, he says, Curtis, nothing's wrong with Susie. Kids are fine. Dog didn't run away. I got a lot of capital. I got more money I can spend. I said, what's wrong? He said, I made a tragic mistake. I said, what happened? He says, I'm 55. He says, I was the CEO of that company, 80 people. I walked in the door every day. I went down the hallway. Holly would greet me at the front desk. I go down the hall, and Jim and Jill and John and whoever they were would greet me with a certain level of reverence. I'd head to my office, and I'd sit there, and pretty soon in the back door of my office, a man would walk in every day, and I would hand him a list of to-dos, and he would delegate them. And they knew I loved them. And he said, I'm lost. I hate life. Is this what I expected to hear? And then he said something to me that would rattle me. Now, he let me off the hook after he said it. But he said, you do a great job when it comes to money. When it comes to everything else, you suck. And he was mad. And he says, I think that you not only need to talk to people about their money, you need to talk to them about what they're planning to do with their life when they retire. And that's where I come up with the word refire, not retire. I think retire is a bad word. Look, if you retire anything but the context of retirement, as we described in this setting, if you retire the tires on your car, where are they going? The boneyard. In fact, anything that you retire is done. We should refire to something and not retire from something. And that's what Tim was talking about. And we just didn't talk about it yet. So I personally took it on to say, Tim, let's talk about what it is that moves your needle, floats your boat, makes you excited to get out of bed in the morning. Now, Tim is fine today, but that's the reason this question is in there. Now, if I'm doing retirement planning 10 years before they retire, and I'm doing an update every couple of years after that, they're not probably 10 years out going to pay much attention to that question. But if I ask that question over and over and over again before they retire, guess what I have a chance of being able to influence? Not just the perspective of money, but the perspective of the freedom, passion, and utility of joy, what they're going to do with their money when they get there. Do you think that's our job? I'm going to propose to you it's our job. Is there something important about your money that I would not know if I didn't ask? Isn't that a powerful question? 1,000 answers to this question. Here's the most powerful for the analytics now. I couldn't ask this question first, but this is the question. All those other questions leads to the crescendo of this very question. In retirement, how much of your income is okay at risk? And then I pause a minute, and I say, now, before you answer that question, I want to give you some additional information. I want you to know there's 2 types of income. There's something we call promise-based income. Doesn't that, by the way, doesn't that sound much better than guaranteed income? As a matter of fact, we use the word in marketing and our vernacular with clients, the word guarantee, so often that it suddenly is deciphered and interpreted by our consumers today. Are you with me? And they fill in the blank of what that must mean if it's coming out of your mouth. So change the vernacular in that first meeting to say we have two types of income. We have promise-based income and we have market-based or risk-based income. Now, there's an initial perception that if I pick promise-based income, I may lose performance. It may cost me something. But for the moment, I want you to bank on what I'm telling you. I'm telling you whether you choose promise-based or risk-based, it's not a sacrifice of performance, not one nickel. As a matter of fact, it may be a catapult to performance. Assuming that were true, at least for the moment, what type of income would you prefer? Promise-based or risk-based? Then I shut up. What is the unanimous answer every time? Promise-based. Now that you understand the difference between promise-based and risk-based, let's get back to our question. How much of that income that you have in retirement are you okay at risk? Oh, geez, 20%. Why? You just changed their perspective, haven't you? Now that it's possible to have promise-based, the answer they're going to give you to this question is going to be a lower number. That means then you want 80% to be promise-based. If that's possible, did I understand you correctly? Do you realize that when you take them down that path without talking product, and it's all in how you say, time what you say, when you say it. When you show them the contrast of the before and after, and they go, what? There's annuities in there? See? But you're showing them more legacy value, lower risk from withdrawal drag, higher liquidity opportunity, and more promise-based income. When you show them what it does and before you tell them what it is, and they object, you say, well, the way you walked in the door, you have 20% promise-based. The only thing you got is Social Security. With my solution, not only do you have $1 million more, $200,000 more, $500,000 more, but you have 80% promise-based income. You see, I took risk off the table and I improved performance. Oh. And what you do is you take them back to the first meeting because you kept good notes, and you hold them accountable to the answers that they gave you in the first meeting, which was very far removed from the product discussion at the end of the third meeting. You see how that works? It's powerful. Took me a whole career to figure out how to psychonomically work with clients to not get them all bent out of shape about the products we're going to discuss. They don't argue with the mechanic when he uses a bearing puller. Why are they arguing with us when we use a life insurance policy or an annuity contract, right? And then the last and final question, after we solve the income in retirement, how much of your assets are okay at risk? How much is going to be, in the market, fully engaged? How much money is going to be in liquidity, cash, reserves, and so forth? How many of you think this is powerful, getting to the heart of the matter? And it's starting to help change the vernacular of that first meeting. And now we're going to talk about what keeps you up at night. The first thing we're going to do is connect with emotion. By the way, there's 3 things that we're trying to do in that first meeting. You ready? These are critical. We're trying to connect with them emotionally. Number 1. And I want you to know, 2, the connection of emotional connection does not happen when you know you heard them. I'll say it again. The emotional connection does not happen when you know you heard them. You know when the emotional connection happens? The emotional connection happens when they feel you heard them. What process do you have to check in once you've gotten their answers to make sure they know you heard them, not just that you know you heard them? Because when you check in that they know you heard them, you now have permission to educate them, which if you don't do that emotional connection before, there's no way that you can know there's a connection. Once we get the emotional connection, we take them to what moves them, what keeps them up at night for retirement. Now, the first one of these 5 is outliving their money. Now, I've had some folks in the back of the room that say, my clients have $500,000, $50 million, or $100 million. My clients, they ain't never going to run out of money. And I'll respond this way. I remember a time like that. I had a call from a client, sold his manufacturing plant in Manhattan, New York. I was in Costa Rica, getting ready to walk out my hotel room to go ziplining when the phone rang in my hotel room in Costa Rica. I answered it. It was Jim. I'm like, what the heck's the client doing getting a hold of me clear out here in Costa Rica? By the way, this was October of '08. He's just sitting in a $750,000 motorhome in Sun City, Arizona. It's his first month of retirement, by the way. And here's how the call went. Curtis, I retired last month, and at the beginning of the week, I was worth $100 million, and I'll be lucky if I'm worth $50 million at the end of the week. Let me ask you a question. Is that guy worried about eating potatoes? Nope. What's he worried about? Lifestyle. He's worried about lifestyle. So either they worry they're going to run out of money, or they worry there's going to be an event that could be so catastrophic that they may, in fact, have to change their lifestyle. It's one of those two. The next one is control, the illusion of control. This is the one Wade Pfau wrote about. Let me play it out for you. Husband and wife, Jim and Mary, Midwest Iowa, Midwest Illinois, Midwest Nebraska, Midwest client, mass affluent. They have $20,000 in their savings account. That's don't touch money. That's their emergency fund. They have $12,000 in their checking account. And that's where their pension, Social Security, and everything goes for the monthly bills. And between the two of them, they got IRA 401k assets of $1 million. We have a conversation about safe withdrawal rates. And they want to preserve all that money, and they just want to hold that money similar to the way they have the allocation safe. They already tell you that they think they want. Isn't it amazing? You could have brain surgery of a rare, rare kind. Can you imagine going into the doctor who's, two in the nation for this kind of brain surgery, and you're going to tell him how he's going to do his surgery? They come in there and they say, well, so okay, here's an easy way to do that. Let's establish what withdrawal you can take from those portfolio dollars while they're in risk-based assets to make it home safely. And so I'll say, well, how much do you think you can withdraw? By the way, Wells Fargo did a study on this a while ago to say, what do people think they can take as a safe withdrawal from their money? What do you think they say?
2.5%.
10. They think it can take 10%. But we're seeing more and more that think it's 4, right? Because of Beganin and San Diego back in the early 90s. All we have to do is refer them to the internet and say, go out and look at some academic papers on safe withdrawal rates for the studies that have been retested from Beganin's work based on the 21st century longevity and how the markets are performing. And what you're going to find out is they argue over 2.2 and 3%. So let's just get to a 3% standard for this discussion today. Jim and Mary have $1 million. They need $90,000 of income. They have $30,000 in pension, $30,000 in Social Security. They're short 30 grand, but they got $1 million, and we're committed to 3%. What's 3% of $1 million? 30,000. Do they make the 90? No. 30,000 Social Security, yes. 30,000 of pension. I can take 3%. I make it, don't I? I make it. 2 years later, Mary says, hey, Jim, I want to take the grandkids to Disney World, all of them. $15,000, Jim. It's not in the budget. How much free liquidity does Jim and Mary have? None, because they have to hold it all hostage to a performance rate from a safe withdrawal of 3, and they're only 2 years in. You see the slippery slope that starts to happen when we start eating up the pile? They have no free liquidity, and that was the aha moment for Wade Pfau, and he wrote an article about it. And he goes, I didn't think about the fact that the money that's invested, we think of it as liquidable, but it's not. And the two types of liquidity we teach at Thrive University are investment allocation liquidity. It's assets held hostage. It has to be managing a portfolio rate for a safe withdrawal rate, but I can't touch it except for income draw off that plan. And they don't have any discretionary liquidity whatsoever for spending. Otherwise, they got to go higher than 3% right out of the bat. If that's a bad market, you're in trouble. By the way, if I go buy income today, without getting into the weeds, If I go buy income today for a husband and wife 65 years of age with a cash refund today, anybody want to know what the safe withdrawal rate for a lifetime is on a husband and wife 65? Anybody? Let me just tell you because it's time for a break. 6%. 6%. Now, if I have $1 million with Jim and Mary, and it's 6% guaranteed for a lifetime, and I can't lose a dime of principal if I die too soon, that eliminates the objection. How much money do I have to now hold hostage for the 30 grand? $500,000. How many dollars did I free up? $500,000. Is that magic? It's the magic potion of what we're talking about. Now, I'm going to leave you hanging on that cliff while we take our first break, and we're going to do 10 minutes, and we'll be right back. You want me? Oh, wait, we got some announcements here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Zach. Thanks, Curtis. Before we take a 10-minute break, turn it back over to Zach and Falls Church for another polling question.
Thank you, Chad. And now we're going to have another polling question for individual viewers. The polling question is, what state are you viewing this program from? I'll repeat that. What state are you viewing this program from? Please use the polling function on your screen to respond. You have 2 minutes. And now, as they said, we will take a 10-minute break, so stay tuned for more Curtis Cloke.
All right, welcome back to the second half here. Curtis Cloke. And hopefully everybody did their polling question on what state you're from that Zach asked for. And without further ado, let's get back to Curtis Cloke for the second half of the presentation.
All right, let's continue the conversation. And maybe I need to pull this mic away. It's a little loud in this room. I hope it's not too loud for the audience. So remember where we left off was control, the illusion of control. We're talking about two types of liquidity. And I'm going to talk about what are the next 5 things that keep people up at night. The next one is a non-debatable, nobody argues about it anymore, inflation. We know we got to build some inflation in, and by the way, there's at least 4 different inflation factors. There's an inflation factor for the lifestyle income needs, separate from the medical and the taxes, separate from non-inflating costs like house payment that'll eventually be paid off, maybe life insurance, that doesn't inflate. Other things that don't inflate should be separated. But so you have lifestyle income, which will have one inflation, you'll have Social Security, which will have another inflation. You'll have medical, which should have another inflation. And then there are different and then things that don't inflate at all, like large premium life insurance, house payment that's a fixed mortgage, things like that. Those are the 4 types of inflations that our softwares need to be able to separate and then bring it all together in the final report to accurately do the calculations for the taxes, Medicare Part B tiering and IRMA tax, Medicare surcharge tax, and so forth. And so the next one is legacy. I want to talk about this. Legacy, we think of as kids and charity. And that's true, but not in the context of what we're talking about with the client in this first meeting. Why did I want both spouses in the room? Because I'm going to say this, and I wanted to create a connection probably with her. Now, it's not always true that it's her, but it's more true that it's her than not. And as I want to make sure that the legacy protects the lifestyle income for the surviving spouse when the first one dies. I promise you, the rewards of standing strong by not yielding to when one shows up, you tell them they now have to reschedule because they can't meet till we're both together. The reward of not doing this until they're both in the room, to be able to say that right there, is worth everything to the future of what it is that you're going to discuss. You need her to know it, and guess what? If it's her, again, I don't want to generalize too much here, but if it is her, guess who he's not going to be able to leave out of the room anymore? Her. And guess who's going to have to stand up and start to agree to stuff? Her. Isn't that what should be? And isn't that what we should want? We want them both on board. The 5th and final of the 5 fears is they do not know who to trust. They're worried about making an investment mistake. And you know why? I had this said to me just the other day. It's funny, I've used this line in this teaching advisors for so long, and then somebody consumer actually used this on me the other day on a phone call. It's the Madoffs of the world. This guy said it to me. He says, "Sir, how long have you been in business?" I said, 32 years. He says, "Do you know it took them 35 years to figure out what Madoff was doing? How do I know they just haven't figured you out yet?"
Good question.
This is a great question. Don't get offended. You understand, right? And so I say that. I've been saying this forever, but it actually happened. A client said that to me. And so in the meeting, this is a technique I call falling on the sword. This is really about neuroscience and psychonomics. It just is. But when you say it's the Madoffs of the world, and I'll say, and I'm not going to be able to say this forever, I've only been in this 32 years. You know Madoff, people are worried about what Madoff was able to do. You know it took him 35 years to figure him out. If you're cynical about who to trust, and heck, you don't know me from Adam other than the reason you're talking to me here today by somebody that said, "Come see Curtis." I said, maybe they just haven't figured out what I'm doing yet. And I've had advisors go, "You really say that?" I said, "Absolutely I do." What do you think just happened at client meeting when you fall on your sword? They're shocked that you said it too, by the way. But all of a sudden it twists their mind to go, "Wow, I can't believe he has the courage to say that." Do you know what that does? That creates a thread of possible trust because he's willing to say it. And then I say this, it's two-pronged. Too many people will procrastinate the decision to make a pick because they don't know who to trust. And you know what they do instead? They go home and they try it alone. There's over 250 moving parts of math that go to your retirement plan. And please, please, no matter what you hear me say today during this 90-minute session that we're going to have for free today, I want you to know that you cannot go home and try this alone. And whether it's me or Jane or Billy or Joe down the street, pick somebody you think you can trust, but do not go home and try this alone. Now, because I'm probably the only guy they're ever going to meet, they're probably going to not meet more than 2 or 3, right? Nobody else is going to say that. I can guarantee you. Unless it's one of you because I told you to say it. But nobody's going to say it to him. And who's going to shine in the technique of falling on your sword the most? Powerful. I'm trying to give you the words of getting through here, breaking through to that first meeting. Okay, so this is where we have completed the psychonomics impact of the connection. A real connection should happen if you've done it right. And now their cup is right set up. They're listening on the edge of their chair. Their arms have come and folded. They're listening. What we have to say is valuable. We've not talked about product. We've not talked about us. We've only talked about them. Now we're going to education. And the next step I'm going to go to is something I call blowing up the island of belief. This slide is about blowing up the island of belief. Let me ask you a question. When clients come in your door, many of them have taken their iPad out at their kitchen table and they've gone to fidelity.com, correct? And it's a simple calculator where they can only put one rate return in, one inflation number in. It's all BS. It's trash. This is total trash. But what do you think they plug in for the performance calculation of what their portfolio is going to do during retirement? And why is that, Barry? Who told them to do that? Dave Ramsey on the radio, right? Now I'm careful because there could be some advisors in here that work with Dave Ramsey. I don't want to throw people under the bus, but I want to talk about this directly because it's relevant to this slide, specifically relevant to this slide. If you take a look at the top of that slide, you'll notice this is the S&P 500. And this light isn't working, but if you look up in the right-hand corner under the growth and hypothetical of $100, it's the S&P 500 we're talking about. And Dave Ramsey says the S&P 500 over a 30-year time frame does 12%. And let me show you, Dave also doesn't know what Dave doesn't know. He's actually talking about something that's true, but has no relevancy to the perspective or to what the client is going to experience in their life. See, so we're not calling him a liar. We're just saying the perspective of the context he's talking about is a different realm of adaptability than the realm our clients are believing, and he's converting his realm, the realm of the S&P average return over 30 years, to their realm, which is completely wrong. So let me show you. Over a 30-year time frame, and if you look, Thornburg did this for 15 years. If you look at all the years they did this, it's a little above 12 or a little under 12 every time. That's what Dave Ramsey's talking about. However, when I drag a 50 basis point fee drag for fees, see, you can't go get an S&P fund from Fidelity, Vanguard, or any of these other index funds for their good looks. They're going to charge you a, is it too good to be free? Yep, because they charge a fee. It's not free. So they build in a fee. They build in taxes for dividends and capital gains and a 3% inflation. And when I have that happen, I want you to see the contrast. What's the rate now?
6.38.
6. Well, they'll argue with you. I said, wait a minute, it's not 6. What do you mean it's not 6? It's there. It says it right on the screen. Kurt said 6. Yeah, but there's 3 things that are true for that 6 to be true. Let's see if any of them are true. Isn't this about truth and perspective, transformation, right? Well, the 3 things that have to be true is the first thing that has to be true is I have all the money I need 30 years from now, 30 years in advance. How many people like that do exist? Because that's $100 ahead of time, 30 years in advance, no deposits, no withdrawals, and that is the only way that turned out being 6. Oh, the second thing you have to believe, it has to be true. Can't believe it's true. Is that you put it all in the S&P 500, no diversification. Who the hell's going to do that? You know anybody's going to do that? I'm not going to do that. The third thing is no matter how good the 50% point ride was, no matter how good that was, no matter how ugly it gets along the way and how close to the finish line, you never flinch. You know anybody like that? Well, if those 3 things aren't true, they ain't true. You see what I'm saying? Now, there's always a wise guy somewhere in the crowd. I promise you there's some here. And they're going, yeah, but let me tell you about my brother-in-law. He had a family stock. It did 12.5% for 30 years constantly. Yep. Well, let me tell you something. There are anomalies to everything, right? As a matter of fact, if I go back to the last $1 billion lottery, which wasn't too long ago, by the way, and I played a 10-second video of everybody that won $25 or more. Do you know how long the video would last? Anybody want to guess? 9 minutes. It lasts 9 minutes. If I played a 10-second video of everybody who lost, how many know how long the video would last? 10 years, no potty breaks. So I'm not saying that literally no one gets that. But I'm saying the remote chance of me planning on that to happen in a prescribed plan is so unrealistic and ridiculous that I'm not going to count on those assumptions and projecting reasonably safely and from an ethical standpoint anything less than what I should be presenting, and it ain't 6. And I'm not talking a bond mix. Okay? So now I want to show you another slide. This is just a demonstration this is actually a piece in our software. And I want to point out, this is the retiree portfolio, and I simplified this for this discussion on this one slide. I got $1 million balance. And I want you to see that 5% of that million, or 50,000, is in fixed cash, earning 2%. Nobody would argue with that, right? Make sense? Then I want you to see that I have 35%, or $350,000 in bonds. Does that seem reasonable to you? Okay. Now we're putting a 3.5% average growth rate on there, but it's not too good to be true. It's just not too good to be free, right? So you got to pay for that service, whether it's a 0.5 point or 1%. I don't want to debate it, but let's just, for the discussion purposes, say the fee to manage the asset was 1%. What's the net, by the way? 2.5. 2.5. Okay. Now everything else is in equities, and we assume it's 6%. Minus a 1% fee drag. I want you to look in the upper right-hand corner, because this tool actually calculates the composite net of fee drag performance of that portfolio over time. What is that average performance? Not even 4%. Now, the reason clients walked in believing it was at least 6, because that's the highest number they remember on their portfolio statement. It ain't the number. And when you actually dissect it in software and use your software as education, you can tell them what it actually is over time. And this is powerful education for the client to see and understand. Does this make sense? By the way, if I made this an 8, if I made this growth rate 8 instead of 6, because some advisors want to argue too, what do you think that 397 becomes?
4.5.
4.4, I think. 4.47. It doesn't do what you think it's going to do, and if we just know this cold as advisors, we can help our clients get to the knowledge of really understanding what they don't know without offense, which is important for us to do. And here's the problem. After we do all that, there's nothing magic about that last slide. It's just giving a perspective. But then we have sequence of returns going on where people buy when they shouldn't buy, sell when they shouldn't sell, and it's what we call the emotion commotion. And next is taking risk off the table. So here's that danger zone 18 risk brochure I'm talking about. And at the end of the slide deck, I'll show you where if you'd like to order some of those, you can actually go online in our store and you can order these. We sold these at the MDRT Power Center store, and they're sold at many of our sessions. They're sold even outside the country. We've been to Singapore, we're going to Australia and in Canada. But this is a powerful piece to use to help get your clients prepared for that first meeting of discussion about what keeps them up at night, what they're most concerned with. But now we're going to educate them on the top 5 risks, different than fears. The number 1 risk of retirement is longevity. Number 2 is health and healthcare inflation, standard inflation, sequence, order of returns, and market volatility. These are the 5 risks. Of all those 18, these are the 5 that every single retiree client, we as advisors should work on mitigating first. Now, I didn't say eliminate, I said mitigate. So I want to show you that longevity risk is in fact the number 1 risk of retirement. If I have this Jim and Mary I talked about earlier with a $1 million portfolio, they're an 80-20 mix. By the way, where have we gone since dividends or since bonds are so low? Where have we gone? I almost give you the answer. Where have we gone in our portfolios from bonds to get income? Dividends. And have we ramped up the risk for that? Substantially, right? So it's now 80-20 instead of 60-40. And they think they can take 5. They want to increase for inflation. They're going to live 30 years in retirement. This was published by Lake Mason. I want you to see this. Down the bottom axis of this report, you'll see 1926 all the way to 1984. And on the left-hand margin going up along the left side, you're going to see 65 to 95. So what this assumes that Jim and Mary are 65 years of age, retired 1926 based on that 80-20 mix, and we're back testing what markets did, okay? And what we're showing you here is, and every year we retire them at 65, assuming 30 years. So I want to give you a perspective because it's missed sometimes. If I'm retiring as a husband and wife, Jim and Mary, 1984, and I live 30 years in retirement, what year at the top of 1984, where that green bar is, what year am I in 30 years later? 2014. People go, what's the relevancy of this? It's old, it's 84. No, it's 14. You get where I'm going with this? Those green bars represent every place it worked. They at least had a penny left. They didn't lose all their money. Here's what happened the rest of the time. And here's what I want to show you. If I retired at 65 and we both died in 10 years, I had a 0% chance of running out of money if I had a short duration of lifetime. 0 in all time frames. Didn't matter what the interest rates were. Didn't matter what inflation was. It didn't matter if I got sick or not. It just didn't matter. Watch what happens when I had 10 years of duration of my life. 32%. Let me ask you a question. What would you not do that you do today if your life depended on it? Grab a car? Go under the knife. How about taking a flight? Would you do those things if there was a 32% chance of failure? No, you just wouldn't do it. This isn't acceptable, ever. By the way, I get all choked up about these Monte Carlo simulations. Hey, we took you from 72% to 89.6%. Woohoo! Really? You mean that if I get in that airplane, I got a more than 10% chance of not making the other side? I think I'll just stay here on the ground. It's ridiculous that we're having these conversations, even if it's 5%. Seriously, when you can actually guarantee a certain level of promise-based income that has no chance of failure whatsoever. And guess what? We're in that business. That's what we do. That's who the manufacturers are that build our products. They build products on a day like this for these reasons. And if I last 30 years, look at the chance of failure. By the way, I didn't make it up. I didn't do the numbers. Jim Otar did the numbers. This was published by Legg Mason. It proves that longevity risk is the #1 risk in retirement. You with me? All right. And this is where I talk about separating planning fees for analytic and advice from management fees and commissions. Separate them. Fees create credibility. Client remains engaged when you do it the right way. They chase you for the next meeting instead of you chasing them and stopping the progress and kicking procrastination in. And it creates an additional revenue source for your firm or the firm you hook and line yourself up with if you yourself do not want to be a 65 or 66. I'm not telling you go get that license if you don't want, but I'm suggesting that you work with somebody that can do the management, because everybody needs equities as much as they need lifetime income. I'm going to tell you. Now, I'm not suggesting that a piece of that pie wouldn't be an FIA where it can only go up and can't go down, and it's not an income rider product for growth of safe money. I'm not suggesting, in fact, we do that. But I promise you some of the money needs to be equities, whether it's in a VA or whether it's in a brokerage account or something. Equities needs to be part of the mix. So have somebody you can line yourself with if you, in fact, are not the one to do that. And then shorten sales process to close. Takes pressure off product sale. We're going to generate this year about $200,000 in just fee, not AUM, in analytical fees. Pressure of the sale has been taken off. Okay? Discussion of multiple planning topics. When you solve the retirement income story, you have second story about how to allocate everything else, right? And then if I got a lot of free capital that I've left over, freed a bunch of hostages, now I'm going to have secondary conversations about long-term care and life insurance and legacy, buying the second house and giving more, right? I freed the money to talk about all the things I'd like to talk about. And they were scared to death. They didn't have enough when they walked in the door. Most of them don't if they do it traditionally. But if you can double the distribution rate on half the capital and free the hostages, it allows you to do the things you want to do. And isn't it funny that if we figure out how to do what they want to do, get their story and do it academically, authentically, and in a fiduciary manner, that when we talk about what they want to talk about, incidentally, we end up selling more of what it is that we're trying to sell. And everybody wins. So I want to talk about these three basic retirement buckets, or these three different retirement strategies. And we all know them. There's the SWIFT. It's the safe withdrawal rate. Remember what I said it is? It's the assume and consume strategy. The next one is the progressive time segments of money strategy. We all know what time segment strategies look like, and that's, by the way, the most popular today. By the way, our software was just implemented company-wide as a promotion by Clarity to Prosperity. I don't know if you know who they are, but this is now the bucket plan software. It has no opinion, has no strategy preference, has no product. It just frames all the math. So you can do a bucket, you can do a swept, you can do a floor. And then there's that promise-based income floor strategy we're talking about. I want to show you some pictures here. This is a picture, now just to kind of frame the picture up, this is, here I am, 5 years before retirement, talking to my advisor. There's a pile of money. It's that green bar. There's the pile of money on the left. I'm 60. I'm retiring at 65. There's my FRA date in there. That dotted line is my essential income need line, or my lifestyle income need line. And I'm just going to take those assets. I'm going to diversify them appropriately and take a safe withdrawal rate. So I'm going to make a bunch of assumptions, and then the day comes when I retire, and I'm going to start taking money out of there, and I'm going to cross fingers, toes, nose, eyeballs, and everything on my body, and I'm just going to hope that I run out of breath before I run out of money. That's a SWIFT. Any questions? Pretty simple, isn't it? And I manage it along the way, and I'm not making fun of it. It's a strategy. I'm just suggesting there's a lack of finality to how it's going to come out. That's all I'm suggesting. I'm not saying it's not a legitimate strategy, because in fact it is. Then I'm going to do the same thing, same asset, same client, and I'm going to do a time segmentation. And I do this to honor C2P, and I'm going to honor Tommy Hagner here in a minute, but it's the now, soon, and later bucket if it's Jason Smith. But it's the, y'all know this probably by heart, it's the go, it's the slow go, and it's the no go. You're not leaving the room till you leave the room, if you know what I mean. I think that's what he says, right? That's time segmentation. And then of course, there's going to be some long-term growth assets in there. Nothing wrong with this. It's a strategy. By the way, there are opinions, strong ones, about all of these, aren't there? This is the floor strategy. So I'm taking the same money, same client, and I'm illustrating different ways, different strategies. The dark green inflated line represents that area at the bottom. That represents the essential income floor. These are the basic life expenses we're trying to build a promise-based floor for, with inflation built in. By the way, income annuities are the only products that can guarantee not just income, but inflation on income. Now, I don't want to advocate an index-tied inflation. Don't buy those products. There's a couple out there, but you'll not do good for the consumer, and the prices are terrible. I'm talking about the ones that you buy with a 1% inflation, 2% inflation, 3% inflation. Those are good to buy if the math says you should buy them, and you can't know whether they win or lose buying inflation unless you have software that actually frames it. So about 60 or so percent of the time, all the income annuities that we use, the software shows we should use some level of low inflation to increase the income, coordinate with Social Security and other promise-based income streams to create this essential income floor. Now, the dark green area is the discretionary income. It's that play check Tom talks about. And that what we do there may be something different than we would do for the essential floor. And then we have those long-term growth assets, okay? 90% of the time, this is the winner for those cases. 90% of the time, and what is it? It's called the hybrid. It's where I do essential income floor with time segmentation and a block of capital for long-term growth. And the only way I can prove this is software. I can talk about our opinions, we can argue about our strategies all day long, but I will promise you, there's an answer which one's most efficient, and software will answer this question. Wade Fowle wrote this article, Basket of Products Approach. For retirement income, we must step away from the notion that either investments or insurance alone will best serve retirees. More emphasis is needed on the basic forms of insurance products and how they may behave as part of an integrated retirement income plan. And so what I'm trying to advocate here is the idea, like the mechanic with the big toolbox with thousands of tools in it, we must embrace the basket of products. See, every product is good and every product is bad. It's the misuse of the product that makes it good or bad. And sometimes if you're not using software and doing analytics, it's your opinion as to the product that you're using because you have no freaking idea as to its value contrasted against others. And it takes a practitioner who understands analytics in order to decipher the two. And so it's an embracement of bringing traditional investment with insurance that makes the situation better for clients while taking risks off the table, while allowing the equities to perform better because we can take a higher risk. So this is something we created called the product allocation to align risk, the Thrive Risk Product Allocation Guide. All we did was we put headings for simplicity for the various types of investment allocations to annuities and what they do, cash, bonds, alternatives, equities, insurance. And then we say, which of those headings mitigate what risk out of the 18? See, and just to give you an example, look at the far left under the annuities heading. We cannot take longevity risk off the table without some form of an annuity guarantee. It's impossible. We can't do it stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Pensions, you count that in. Social Security, you count that in. But if the gap of income for essential income is greater than those two things, buying income adds to another layer of pension type income. And then look over here under equities. You can't manage hyperinflation if you don't have equities. Got to have equities. I could go on and on. You see what this chart does, and it illustrates to us the power of diversification of allocation, both income and equities. So next on the list is divide and conquer. This is a really important principle. It's an easy one. And basically, here we are with this pile of money. We're sitting at the client's kitchen table or sitting at our conference room table. And they worked a lifetime putting all these dollars together. And what we're going to do is we're going to divide and conquer them between promise-based income, which Tommy calls the paycheck, right? By the way, all this, Tommy and I are so intricately a part of each other in terms of our messaging. We speak together. We'll speak a couple times this year from DRT. We did already once, 2 other conferences together. And I do, Tommy will tell you this on a video here before the end of the session. I do Tommy's personal retirement plan, him and Lori. So when I talk about Tommy, if you think I'm robbing his material, just want you to know I'm not. Everything I'm talking about is with his implicit permission and implication is saying, I want you to use it. So we incorporate this with his permission. But when you understand that we create this promise-based income, when you go out, by the way, all the SPIAs, all the DIAs, all the QLACs, all the VAs, and all the FIAs are piped into my software so I can contrast which one creates that income on that commencement date with or without inflation for the lowest amount of deposit on the day I'm depositing the money. I don't have to guess which product that is. I can freaking know because I am testing them in a laboratory of all the products. When I say the numbers, they're actual, the illustration from the company is piped in to my software. Now, it took me a long time to figure out how to get all that done. The Canex pipes right into my software. And now they've added FIAs and they've added VAs in addition to SPIAs and DIAs. And you don't leave the software to go say, where do I buy income for the lowest dollar? Where can I free the most hostages? Where can I create the highest distribution rate? And when I tell you I'm doing that with finality, I'm not blowing smoke. I'm doing it absolute with precision. And so can you. And that leaves all the market-based income and growth assets for the discretionary paycheck. And this is for the liquidity, discretionary income, growth, legacy. And what do we give ourselves permission to do? Chase risk. That's why it wins. That's divide and conquer. Michael Kitchen says you have to have a defensive team in the portfolio, and you have to have an offensive team in the portfolio in order to last a lifetime. And that's what these 2 components do. By the way, when I buy promise-based income, if I have fixed income components in my portfolio and equity components in my portfolio, what portion of my portfolio am I using to buy income? Fixed income. I'm doing this in lieu of the bonds, in lieu of the cash, in lieu of the fixed income components of my portfolio. So if I end up taking 30, 40, 50% of the assets and moving into promise-based income, based on what my allocation was, taking those components off and those now being represented in the promise-based, do you understand why I might have a very high percentage of what's left over after I carve off emergency fund dollars in equities? And I haven't changed the risk of the portfolio. I want you to understand promise-based income is our ROI. It creates the reliability of income. That's what that represents. And risk-based assets are discretionary income, growth assets, free spending, liquidity, legacy, and long-term care. That's where that goes. Many goals we're trying to achieve as practitioners for our clients in retirement plan: reliability of income, beating inflation or meeting inflation, minimizing taxes, max the returns, minimize the risk. Do not forget about the surviving spouse. How do we manage all these things with efficiency? And so we bring all these things together for your client's retirement plan. This is what you aspire to do. And we have to do this emotionally and financially to meet their needs. We have to deal with the neuropsychonomics, if you will. And understand when it comes to the income floor, these are the products that the industry has given us for income. It's either a GLWB of some FIVA product, a SPIA, or QLAC. Except for 1 or 2 rare exceptions, this is it. This is what we have. Key elements of SPIAs and DIAs. Understand an income annuity has no ongoing fee drag. I price it, for a dollar amount of deposit for a commencement date. I plug that into the software, and there's no shrinkage of the income payment that's promised. That's the income payment I get. So the spread is already built into the amount I pay versus the amount I get. And it's being calculated net of fee drag in my calculations when contrasting against traditional investment strategies with fee drag. It has no ongoing fee drag. When a Dave Ramsey or a Ken Fisher gets involved with the opinion of a client, he says, I heard annuities are bad with high fees. An income annuity has no ongoing fee drag. By the way, just this year, Ken Fisher started carving out a little notation in every one of his articles before he trashes annuities. I just saw him start to do this. And the reason he started to do this is because us and others were nearly on the edge of a suit for him. There's 42 types of annuity contracts. And he was defining one type of an annuity and brushing the broad brush as though it represented all of them. And it was ethically incorrect. And right now, the last of the articles Ken Fisher's done, he puts a little parenthesis that says, except for SPIA, single premium immediate income annuities, which this doesn't apply to. Now, he should be saying SPIA and DIA, but he doesn't know what he doesn't know enough to actually make the article accurate. But I actually applaud him in going that far because he's not done it before. And even Ken Fisher's now making the distinction. It's the only product, income annuities, is the only thing you can absolutely lock and load inflation guarantees of some form or another. And for non-qualified assets, you get special tax treatment that we call FIBO. Last in, first out, first in, first out, first in, blend out, represents exclusion ratio tax treatment. And for all income guarantees from annuities, including FIA income riders and VA income riders and SPIAs and DIAs and QLACs, all of them for lifetime income solutions have mortality credits. Tommy's given you that narrative probably many times. There's a piece of it that's coming back as principal piece based on the performance of the interest rate, and a piece that's coming from mortality credits, and the further you live, the more mortality credits that you're getting. That's really the simplicity of that discussion. And so now it's buy income and invest the difference. Now, there's three things that we mitigate when an income annuity of some form or another is instituted in the retirement income for the promise-based income stream. And this, if you ever seen this picture before, it's called the impossible triangle. Look at it, it kind of makes you wacky when you look at it. So I'm saying, how do we make the impossible possible? It was never thought that you could just guarantee a lifetime income, but what could I do in inflation adjusted? Well, we actually can mitigate inflation with the products that we sell. Secondly, maximum tax efficiency. I've explained FIBO for non-qualified money, and everybody says, well, yeah, but my clients don't have much non-qualified money, Curtis. Where's the tax efficiency for the qualified? Well, I don't have time to get into it today. That's where you want to sign up for the class. Those in the room have the sheet. We'll talk about it here at the end of the session. But we created a trademark called RMD compression, and there's 3 ways to legally compress RMDs and maximize Roth conversions that create tax efficiency for the qualified that wasn't even perceived possible. Again, it was this particular piece that I'm talking about here that I'm not having time to define today because I'd get in the weeds too much, was the very reason why the American College instituted me as an academic and an adjunct as part of the RACP. Because when they saw what we had created using these RMD compression pieces with what we'd learned about some of these products, they said, we'd never seen or heard that before. Not making it up. That was David Littell who found that out. And then the next thing is we take the fee drag off the table for these assets. Somebody says, well, how much are you going to charge me if I do my business with you? Well, it depends on how much promise-based income you buy. See, if half of it goes to promise-based income, half of it goes the other way. If I look at the totality, it may be 50 basis points. You understand what I'm saying? By the way, your mind before might not have perceived that all 3 of these things in concert are being mitigated. I didn't say eliminated, I said mitigated, right? What are the 3 things for nominal versus real returns on the Thornburg study that I did a little bit ago? What was the difference between the 12 and the 6?
Inflation, expenses, fees.
And we mitigate those with this product. So the hurdle to the net real return isn't as high as the raw gross. Let me promise you something. If you do this right with software, I promise you that you'll crush fixed income returns. And that's the portion of the portfolio replacing, and you'll chase equities faster. You will increase the performance. You won't cost them anything, and yet you take a lot of risk off the table. And so we create what I call the most for the least story. The most income using the least amount of the portfolio to do other things. And lastly is the 4 L's of retirement. This is a Wade Pfau article. There are 4 things that people are most concerned about being true when their retirement plan is done. Longevity, will it last? Lifestyle, is it safe? Let me ask you a question. Another Tom story, by the way. If I have a husband and wife and 2 of their teenage kids flying from Manhattan, New York to Las Vegas, Nevada, they rent a black SUV with a cold ice air conditioner to drive through a desert they've never seen before. And they've been driving through there for all day and part of the afternoon, and suddenly they drive by a sign that says, the next gas station, 180 miles away. What happens when they got a quarter of a tank? Well, the air conditioner goes off right away, right? And the windows come down, silence in the car for just a little bit, and pretty soon, 4 people have an opinion about how to manage the foot, feed, the gas, and the coast in order to make the gas last. Am I right? Let me ask you the question. When does the joy of that trip end?
In the gas station.
When they run out of gas or when they think they might? Do you know how many people are just on the edge of wondering if they might at 80 years of age? And the joy and the utility of enjoying their retirement is ended, even though many of them won't. And you know they won't because they constrain their spending to what Tom calls a just-in-case retirement, or they constrain their spending on a have-to requirement. And that's because they're leaving money to be safe in a CD for many years that was paying 0.5% or a gumball a month. When in fact, we could have guarantees paying much higher returns and not running out of money. So sometimes being too safe or safe ignorantly can be the raw reason why we in fact are renting out. Legacy is about protecting that surviving spouse, making sure that she's as safe and has enough as when they were both alive, if in fact it's her. And then liquidity, I've already talked about this. So we build a dashboard, a retirement income dashboard that contrasts the before they walked into the office and the after we were done with their analytics in the office, so we can contrast the complete value based on those 4 L's in pictorial form to the client without the need for them to go look at the 250 calculations that were being performed under the hood. How powerful do you think that might be? Okay, so I'm showing you now these core measurements that define a picture of safe or unsafe, and here are the 4 pictures. The first one is investment net worth. This is the date we're doing the work. This is the spec on when the last one dies. This is the amount of money they'd like to leave in legacy to their heirs. And if I show them the picture, and if that were absolutely true based on the assumptions that we made, based on the specs that we set, given the discovery meeting, which is the second meeting, they might feel pretty good when they see this chart and say, probably not going to run out. You agree with that? However, this is a linear calculation. We have a stress testing mechanism, Monte Carlo, this thing that says, what about in the best of times and the worst of times? This one still works. It actually gets down to about $200,000 if I look at the worst of times. So I know that when they walked in the door, this plan worked. Some people might ask, well, why would you do anything about promise-based income if they have a plan that's going to work? Well, it's not about whether they need to. It's about if they want to. And if it'll actually make them grow their assets, take less risk off, more risk off the table, and they can leave more to their heirs, why in the hell wouldn't you? So we're going to show you here in a minute. That's the first one. The second one, and see, this is the lifestyle. This is the second L. lifestyle. That's our 3% withdrawal drag. And we're testing how much of our assets in the market are being drugged to maintain it, to supplement our income with promise-based income. And you can see that in the beginning, in the red zone here, they might have delayed Social Security right there, and that's why that spiked up. And then after they turn Social Security on, it goes down. Right there, they cross over an unsafe point. And we're quantifying that. Okay, so yeah, they make it, but they make it with maybe some unsafe withdrawal drag. I can quantify that by a picture. This is the reliability of income. They said they wanted 78% reliable. Well, you can see this is when he dies, right here. Did we leave her in the same condition we did him? Or is she in a much worse risk position at the wrong time in her life? You can quantify that. Discretionary liquidity. Anytime you see this line fall to the floor, it just means you're now above your performance rate with your withdrawal drag, and you need more than the gains on the portfolio to generate the income you're digging into principal. That's all that's telling you. And these are the years you're not digging into principal. But I want to show you they're digging into principal. And when I go back to the original chart, this one here, right there, doesn't the lines prove that out? They're all correlated. Making sense? All right, let's move on. This is a contrast of the two. So the investment net worth shows us the green line instead of the red line. I'm not sure what color you're seeing on your screen. I suppose it could be blue based on the computer screen contrast. But where do I have more money, the green line or the red line in the investment net worth? Green line. A withdrawal drag. Where do I have a lower average withdrawal drag? Green line or the red line? Where do I have a greater reliability of income? The green line or the red line? Where do I have more discretionary liquidity? By a lot for free spending. Green line or the red line? Now, I've been talking to you, the advisor, about products all the way along, but imagine this was a client at the end of the third meeting where I'm now just showing them the pictorial contrast auditorily, and I've yet to talk product. I'm going to tell them to pick a line. What line do you want? What line are they going to tell you they want? Have you talked about product yet? When you show them what it does and you build it off what they said they want, the product doesn't matter anymore. I mean, if a client walks in with his Cadillac and he hates a Phillips screwdriver, and the mechanic comes and tells him, I can't fix this without using a Phillips screwdriver, is a stupid client going to tell you, don't use the screwdriver? No. So, give me the green line. And this helps you do it. So we did a couple of case studies, and I sent those to you in advance. Just real quickly, 61 and 57-year-old husband and wife. He thinks he'll live to 90, she to 95. We have Social Security, pension for him. Desired net income. This is net income of 103.2. We're assuming a 2.5% inflation for the lifestyle income, 5% for medical, non-qualified assets of 335, and qualified assets between the two of them of about 971, and housing wealth of 300 grand, $1.6 million. That's what it looked like. That's the case I just showed you. That's what it looked like in the baseline and the dashboard. We delayed Social Security with an income bridge. Don't have time to talk about these. With an essential income floor, we did a QLAC. We did some bracket bumping Roth conversions. Added some life insurance and long-term care because we freed some hostage dollars. Sold all our products in this case. We took a lot of risk off the table, and that was the contrast. How hard is that solution to sell? Now, I'm not showing the clients what I showed you in the last slide. I'm just showing them the contrast. How hard is that to close? It's a picture. Here's the next case. People say that works with average clients, but what about high net worth clients? Well, this is $6.7 million. 63 and 53, 89 and 97 for longevity dates. Social Security of 30,000, almost 31 and 16, no pensions. Net income desired for cash flows, lifestyles, 156. 3% inflation for a lifestyle income, 5 for medical. They have a 1.2 million of non-qual and about 5 million of qual, 610,000 of housing wealth. They have 6.7, almost $8 million of assets. That's the way that looked when they walked in the door. Do they have a problem? No, they don't have a problem. They don't have a lot of promise-based income for the secondary spouse. But why would we do this if we don't have a problem? Let me show you why. Because we make it better. In this case, we delay Social Security with a bridge, create essential income floor, we chase equities faster for more growth, which is different about this. We had a QLAC, bracket bumper off conversions, and we had life insurance for legacy planning. And there's the difference. It's huge. By the way, it's a difference of about 5 million versus almost 9 million. $4 million contrasted difference. And look at the safety factor. How much safer did I make it? It's not just the additional dollars, it's how much risk did I take off of the table. Jamie Hopkins wrote a book called Rewirement. So we say, stop retiring, start refiring, and you only get that by rewiring your mind. He writes about housing wealth, which I'm about ready to show you. So this is what it looks like in the basic screen after all the inputs are done in the software. And I'm doing this just to illustrate housing wealth for a moment, as I did promise you. And if we look under real estate and liabilities, the third box over at the top, you'll see that we're talking about a house in this solution worth about $280,000. You can see down in the asset column on the left-hand side at the bottom, qualified assets are 322, non-qualified at 250. And I want you to see, this is their dashboard. This is what it looks like. And if I stress test this, this is a linear calculation. When I stress test this for bad times, they run out of money before they run out of breath. Now, I didn't put that slide in there because I tried to keep my slide numbers down. But they're in trouble. This is not going to work. And they're out of assets to work with. Okay? I lied to you. I did put the stress test in there. This assumes 2019 was 2000 all over again. And I ran out of money. I forgot I did show it to you. Okay? Now, when I had housing wealth to generate income, and I'm not going to get into the weeds here, look at the difference between the green line and the red line. Sometimes housing wealth is the only solution left. And if I don't talk about it, I have no hope for this client. I want to make something very clear about housing wealth. When it comes to a financial practitioner, we don't sell reverse mortgages. We're referring to a reverse mortgage expert. Let's get that distinction down. By the way, when you refer somebody for a housing wealth discussion on a reverse mortgage, you don't make a dime. And that's the way it ought to be. You don't make a dime. You can't make a dime. You go to jail if you make a dime. You're not going to make a dime. But when you need to get a will drawn or an estate plan completed or a trust drafted by an attorney, do you make any money on that? We've been doing that for years and never complained about it. Why can't we talk to them about housing wealth, refer them to a housing wealth expert on reverse mortgage, and then we whine about not making a dime? We do that all day long. Stop it. Stop it. Because we are getting paid a fee to give advice. And if we eliminate housing wealth as our discussion point, we are not being fiduciarily upright to our clients. We can't be. In fact, how much of housing wealth is represented by your average client? I would propose to you on average 50% or more. How in the world can we talk fiduciarily about a retirement plan and leave out half their wealth? And this is an example. By the way, when I stress test this, you see how they run out before? Now I can prove in the worst of times they don't run out. It's powerful stuff to include housing wealth. So we buy income and invest the difference. And that's what that looks like. I'm going to play a quick video for Tom Hagner here.
Hey, Tom Hagner here. I've written 5 books on retirement. Many of you know that. But I'll tell you, I've also attended Thrive University multiple times. Curtis Cloke is a personal friend of mine. He does some of my own personal financial work. And I will tell you, if you like the stuff that I do and you want to go deeper, you ought to attend Thrive University. I'm telling you, this is not for beginners. It is not a beginner's course. But if you want to go deep, deep, deep in the weeds, I'm telling you, nobody knows this like Curtis Cloke does. So hope to see you at a Thrive University in the future.
So if you'll text the capital letters Thrive, the letter U, if you want some free video content to watch after our conversation today, text that to 66866. A link will pop up. We've created some stuff online. 4 videos are free. There's some other content you can grab onto there. If you want to just go straight to the website and look at the page on the screen, you can just go to, I think I'm missing something, HTTPS, // thrive.mentor.com, and it'll get you there. That's not a www website. That's the https://thrive.mentor.com. That'll get you right to the site. And then if you're interested in Thrive University, you can go to thriveulive.com, click on the registration for Newport Beach, California, August 7th and 8th. It's the last Thrive U of 2019. We still have just a couple of seats left, I believe, but you can register on there, and you can learn more about the 2-day intensive workshop that we do, helping advisors understand what it is we talked about for 2 hours today. Just on the 5 fears and 5 risks presentation, I showed you a little bit of that today, but we actually have that available to you on our shopping cart on curtiscloke.com. Go to shopping cart. And here's what Ron Braun said after he started using it for the first time. Actually, I got an email from Ron all 4 days after he started using it. He used it every day. He said, just close the 3rd prospect interview in a row just by playing your video of the 5 fears and 5 risks. And so if you're interested in purchasing that PowerPoint, you can go on the website and get that out there right on the website. And then this is just more about the 5 fears and 5 risks. This is what it looks like when you go to the store. If you'd like those danger zone booklets, by the way, you can buy them in really about half price in 50 blocks of 50 and 100. And then that's the 5 fears, 5 risks slide that you can get online if you're interested. By the way, we have lots and lots of advisors all around the country using that slide deck, all of them reporting a big change to the contrast of what they were doing before and the after. And then Retirement Next Gen, this is just Dave Allison, who tested all the software programs out there and found ours to be the strongest, and he gives us a pretty strong accolade. That's retirementnextgen.com. So I've taught you all these key strategies and concepts today. The perspective changes, I won't reread them, just for the sake of time. Our goal is to help our clients retire for a life of significance. Don't forget about my friend Tim. It's the utility of joy to live and give on purpose and for purpose. I really appreciate your time and attention today, and thank you very much for having me here. We'll look.
Do we have any questions coming in?
Yeah, we had a question come in online. What was the software that you mentioned for the buckets?
It's the Thrive, I'm sorry, it's www.retirementnextgen.com. It's so the name of the product is Retirement Next Gen. We just launched it with several advisors over in Nashville for Carson Group. Ron Carson over in Omaha, Nebraska. You might know who he is. Jamie Hopkins, a principal over there today, working with Jamie and his group. And then C2P, and then Guardian. A lot of the Guardian folks around the country have been using it. So Retirement Next Gen.
Any questions we have in the room? Any other questions we have out there?
Zach, any other questions at your end?
None on my end, no.
All right, I think we're wrapped up with this, with at least my part of the presentation. Back to you, Zach.
Yep.
Thank you, Chad. We'll close out with one more polling question for the virtual attendees. So the polling question, the last one, is name the presenter from today's broadcast. I'll repeat that, name the presenter from today's broadcast, and you'll have 2 minutes to respond. Once again, thank you, Curtis, and thanks to all who have participated in today's NAIFA Live. Don't forget to mark your calendar for the next meeting on August 8th, hosted by NAIFA Nebraska and featuring David Holstrom, presenting 2 interesting planning topics. For those who have joined us virtually, this concludes our program. For those who are participating from area viewing locations, we turn you back to your local meeting and encourage you to continue the discussion. Thank you for your membership in our industry's biggest and best professional association. You make us NAIFA proud. From all of us here at NAIFA National, we hope you have a great day.